if you want to stop obsessing about life passing you by, learn the art of enjoying what you have so far and resting in it and sitting with it and dwelling on the goodness of God to have brought you to this place. Learn the art of doing that, because you will get so much more out of each day. Days are so much more important than years. So many people live so many years in so few days.
Your problem is not what you don't know. Your problem is that you don't do what you already know.
Come on.
And so it's like some things that we're struggling with. It's not that we're ignorant, because that's a different problem altogether. Maybe you haven't been exposed to it.
Yeah.
But our problem a lot of times is that we're not doing what we already know.
You're right. Keeping the law of God. No, because the law of God is the user's manual for being fruitful in the world he created.
The best part about this, about any principle, is that it's not reserved just for the people that call themselves Christians.
Right. The law of God is the rules of the universe.
It's not bondage, it's boundaries.
What if I told you you were meant for something more? And what if at first sight your birthright was inked in blood? And what if dominion was written in big bold letters? And what if we shouldn't just occupy but overcome? And what if the observation of opposition was us? Antikemi, the podcast.
You are tuned in to the Antikemi podcast. We're back.
We're back. Really back. I know we said we were back.
I know.
But we're back.
We're back. We are back in the rhythm of just recording, having these type of conversations. And I've missed you, man.
Yeah, I've missed you. I've missed this. I've missed the drops.
Yeah.
But, I mean, with all respect to those who join us, because, man, without that, like, what are we doing, right?
Right.
But we just, like, sometimes you got to take a minute. Like,
It does make a lot of sense, especially with what I feel the Lord is going to kind of guide our conversation to talk about. But before we jump into all of the meat and potatoes, we want to just say thank you for joining us.
Yes.
Hit that subscribe button, hit a like, drop a comment, do all the things. We're going to start to be more vigilant and kind of reminding us to do it, because it absolutely makes a tremendous difference in how YouTube pushes this out to new audiences. And people are kind of stumbling on it here and there, but we want to be, vigilant and making sure we're stewarding the platform well.
Yeah, and we have a couple of listeners that have been like starting to be almost like ambassadors. They're like telling people about it, and it's super dope if someone shares the video. That's awesome, especially if you put like share it with a comment, with a caption, because that does really better in the algorithms in my experience. But man, it's super powerful when people tell a friend that they know would be blessed. Like, I'm not even talking about just sharing it on socials, but if you like tell somebody, man, I think this would bless you.
Yeah.
Because we've got like some pretty loyal listeners now that are coming to us because somebody said to them, this podcast is blessing me. Like, check this out. So, hey, help us out if you don't mind, because we believe we're supposed to be building something here, and that
I'm going to go on the limb and say it's not even a matter if you don't mind. This is a level of evangelism.
It is.
And so I'm going to go out and say that this is a way that we can leverage the Great Commission in a digital marketplace,
right,
and do it in a way that is probably more, not just convenient, but it's going to garner probably more results than just grabbing a bullhorn
Yeah.
and on the side of the road kind of screaming out
In this generation.
truth,
Yeah.
And so we have a platform, we have a microphone, we have cameras, we have the opportunity to amplify our voices.
Yeah.
And so while we are leveraging other platforms that are built, such as social media, such as like the YouTube platform, let's do it for the glory of God. If you're tuned in, if you're listening, do your part as well. Share that out. Let somebody know that there is good news. People are looking to live Antikemi, whether they know it
Whether
or not.
they know it or not.
Like they feel something
Yep.
is resisting inside of them.
Yep.
And they're ready to push back against the system. And sometimes they don't even have the language to do so.
Yeah.
And I think this platform specifically can give you the language to start to manifest some of the qualities that we should operate in as believers.
Yeah, you sharing this with somebody that you genuinely believe will be blessed by it does help us. Obviously, it helps us. But it is not just you helping us build a podcast or a ministry or whatever. Right. It's you ministering. And there are so many different, I like this format because I feel like there is a wide gamut of people that would be blessed and helped by it. Mm-hmm. It's not just, first of all, there's people that might not be open to more religious stuff, but they're spiritual enough or they're aware enough, they're searching enough that they might really connect with some of what we're talking about, and that could be a door for them to the gospel. But then there's the other people. There's hungry Christians that are kind of feeling they're dying on the vine. They're, confused people, scared people. Mm-hmm. And then, that the tinfoil hat person in your group that, rabbit holes all the time and spins out but they also need to hear this message that, going down a rabbit hole is not always synonymous with waking up, with remembering who you were created to be and who you are beyond this mortal coil. It can be a part of it, but it can also be a diversion from it. And that's a lot of what we talk about is like, what then? Like, okay, so you rabbit holed on 1, 2, 3, 20 different topics. What has that produced in your life? If the threads aren't all coming together, that's what we're talking about.
Exactly. I would even also say not all of us are going to be called like Peter, specifically like how Jesus was encouraging him, like, on this rock, I'm going to build my church.
Yeah.
Like Cephas. Not all of us can have that type of mantle that we carry, but I would go so far as saying all of us can be like Andrew. All of us can be responsible for introducing somebody to Jesus.
That's good.
And that's exactly what Andrew, like, we don't know much about Andrew in Scripture. He doesn't say a lot.
Right.
There's not a lot of different stories connected to his individual story. We know he was apostle. We know he was definitely called. We know that he was among the 12. We know he was martyred. We know a lot of different things about him. But one thing that we do know also is that he was responsible for, hey, come see.
It's good.
I found Messiah. Come see.
It's good.
All of us could be that bridge.
That's
and so like,
good.
hey, let's do our part. I know I'm guilty of like consuming content that I have found super valuable in my life. And I enjoyed the content, took detailed notes, and then I moved on. I didn't necessarily share it. I didn't give it a like. I didn't even do the things that I know were necessary because you just get caught up in other things.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be more intentional and more mindful of like, hey, let's show the algorithm what I'm interested in, as well as boost this content up into the front, because Lord knows there's enough other garbage out there that's going to get circulated and pushed to the front of the line.
It's actually a very Antikemi thing to do, because we're battling the entire weight of a system that is built to put confusion, fear, negativity, division, darkness in front of people.
Yeah.
But it has this backdoor mechanism by which you can amplify light when you let the algorithm know you're appreciating this. It actually helps us all. It because the one thing that they're not going to do is ignore something that's getting traction, because they benefit from that. So
Absolutely. Yes.
letting it know, like, hey, we actually like this thing that is pulling the other direction. At the end of the day, you have the power to push back in some of those ways.
Yes, sir.
Also, just a personal disclaimer, you're going to see me being a little fidgety tonight and guzzling water. I'm just, like a lot of us, trying to shake off a little virus and whatever. And so you're going to see me, I'm drinking like a fish tonight.
Hey, that's not a problem whatsoever. So while we took a little time off,
Take a little time right now and say, thank you, Lord.
did you do what you needed to do? Did you rest?
I
That's kind of a loaded question, I know. But.
I worked toward it. You did better. I think you did well.
I did. I think I was very intentional.
Yeah.
I struggled, I want to say at first. I did struggle because I did feel the weight of like this platform that, we're starting to build kind of pulling on me, because I've said it before, I'll say it again. Like, I want to steward it well. And I do hear, people like say, hey, we definitely.
Where y'all at?
Yeah, where y'all at? We're missing some things. And so I felt that kind of in the back of my mind, but I also knew that you can't pour from an empty cup, not effectively. And I don't think either one of us wants to just hop behind this microphone and just to talk. We could do that. We're even gifted to do that. So like we could churn up some content, right? If it's just a matter of like pushing out an episode, right? But I think both of us wanted to make sure that we're pouring from a place where we're able to actually give. And you said something last time that was super vital. How you were vulnerable and kind of just shared like, hey, you were kind of hitting a brick wall. You were exhausted and tired mentally, emotionally, and like didn't have a lot, to give in that moment, but you still came and poured, right? And there's time and place where we have to kind of push through. But when you have an opportunity, I think, to rest, I do think that can be just as important as pushing through. You kind of taught me that.
I think, and obviously one thing is, I believe we'll get our communication style more perfected. So, in the future, I think we'll be able to communicate some of this stuff more effectively too. Like we're going to be down for these dates and all that. We're kind of learning some of that as we go. I think we both went into this season with a little bit of probably a little too much optimism about the pace we thought we might be able to keep up. So we kind of learned a lesson here.
Yeah.
But, we've said before, we don't just do a podcast together. We do a lot together. And one of those things is pastoring a church together. And our rhythm at the church has been since long before my tenure that at the end of the year, the last 2 weeks of the year, we do what the bishop always called, and we've kept it, letting the land rest, which of course is drawn straight from the Bible. Every seventh year, you didn't sow; you just ate whatever grew up wild and whatever you had stored. And so we do that at the church. That's downtime. We just try to not use anything but what we have to come together and worship the Lord. But apart from that, we're not really in the office. We're not turning on the computers. We're not, we try
Taking
to
meetings.
Yeah. Apart from emergencies, that time of year, there's something about the rhythm of the universe that there does tend to be more funerals than normal. And that's just part of the reality of life. So you have things come up, but we try to do it on a shell basis. And I think the podcast will probably follow that rhythm going forward.
Right.
So you can just expect December will be, especially the second half of December, will be a good time to catch up and re-listen to stuff or, whatever, if you want to interact with the podcast. But yeah, bro, that concept that you're pointing at, that entered our life, I guess about a decade ago now, give or take, where we just started to understand it. Really, first it was theological. I'm reading the 10 Commandments, and I was actually arguing with people who were in the Hebrew roots kind of movement. Some
The
of you will know
legalism
what that
aspect of
is.
it?
Yeah, some of that winds up, I believe, falling under the Galatian heresy, the reason that Paul wrote the letter to the Galatians, and the reason it was actually the issue that caused the first church council.
Yes.
In Acts 15.
Yes.
And so there is a way to become aware of the value of the Hebrew roots of our faith and of the value of Torah that is skewed by the enemy.
Yeah.
And so you can get confused about faith and righteousness, works. You can get into confusion there. And I was fighting against that. But even though I stand to this day I stand by a lot of the concerns that I had, the other side of that debate was landing some zingers that were making me uncomfortable. And so it was provoking me to read the word with fresh eyes. And I just kept reading the 10 Commandments over and over and being like, okay, so there's not one of these that we consider to be metaphorical.
Come on.
or no, I've not, other than people who are openly of the antinomian heresy, meaning they genuinely believe that there is no such thing as sin anymore.
Right.
So they don't, there is no such thing as breaking the law of God anymore. And that is a stream of thought within, heterodox Christianity. They're wrong, and
For the record.
the church has known that for
Yeah.
because that's like basically all those things. It's just an ancient heresy being rehashed. But other than them, I've never heard anyone within the church try to make the case that the 10 Commandments are no longer
Done away with.
Yeah, that they were done away with on the cross. Like, that's not, anyone who's done any level of study understands that when the Bible references the law, it doesn't always mean the same thing. No. And you have to know contextually, is it talking about the ceremonial law? Is it talking about the, the civil law of ancient Israel? Yeah. Is it talking about the Talmud and the oral traditions of the rabbis? Because often it is. Or is it talking about the law of God? And that's just the broad strokes, because there's the laws of nature, there's natural law, there's creation law, there are actually the word law in our Bibles is translating a lot of different concepts.
Yes.
And it's not translating many of them very well. We don't really have a word in English that does a great job of translating almost any of them.
Right.
So that being said, I'm looking at the Ten Commandments going, these are literal. We know that. They're not metaphorical. I mean, they have, like everything in the scripture, they have metaphorical levels of meaning, but they are also literal.
Right.
They're not done away with. They are the law of God. They're not the law of Moses. They are the law of God.
Well, let's read them. Let's just in case we have somebody who is stumbling upon the content, and they're like, okay, the 10 Commandments, right? So we look at Exodus 20.
This is literally the foundation of all Western systems of law.
Absolutely. Then God spoke all these words, saying. So we can just start. Then God spoke.
Right. Yeah, Moses didn't say.
Right.
It does say sometimes Moses.
Right. This is coming God. Straight from the mouth of God.
Yeah.
Yehovah. I am Yehovah, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. Now let's get started, basically.
Right.
You shall have no other gods before me.
Yeah.
You shall not make for yourself an idol or any likeness of what is in heaven above or on the earth beneath or in the water under the earth. You shall not worship them or serve them, for I, Yehovah your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children of the third and the fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing loving kindness to thousands, to those who love me and keep my commandments.
So we're at the top of the list here.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything we can discount out of that because we're living post-Calvary?
Not a one.
I mean, I can't find anything in what you just read that no longer stands exactly as it stood the day he said it.
There's no one who's going to say we can willfully make idols.
Right. I mean, yes, there's a metaphor there for things in our lives that become idols. And yeah, the commandment applies to that.
Right.
But also, yeah, you're still not supposed to make stuff and worship it.
Exactly.
So I just wanted to point out like that you're going to keep reading, but this is what I kept running into. Like, yeah, no, that's still a no-no.
That
you know what I mean?
Still applies. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not leave him unpunished who takes his name in vain. One day we're going to come back.
Yeah, we are.
To this one.
Yeah, we are.
And we're going to bring some clarity.
We should do the 10 Commandments, actually.
You know what? I love that idea.
Yeah.
Yes. So stay tuned for that. Well, you know what? This might be part one. Because we're getting ready to read something in the 10 Commandments that we're going to dive into.
But again, don't take the Lord's name in vain. Like, if you grew up in church, you know ain't nobody trying to metaphor that.
Right. That's rock solid. Here's something that people skip over somehow with all of the 10 Commandments. They're just like, remember the Sabbath day.
Oh, well, yeah. That's the one that doesn't count.
Right. But this is what's key. Remember the Sabbath day, comma, to keep it holy.
Yeah.
Hold on. Even before we read on. Remember the Sabbath day.
Yeah.
The fact that the sentence starts off with an instruction for you to remember
Yeah.
means that it can be forgotten. I don't see anywhere else in these commandments that starts off with remember. It doesn't say remember not to make an idol. It doesn't say remember you should have no other gods before me.
No.
Those are just straight up sentences. But this particular commandment, he starts off saying remember.
Which is zakar, to mark. Mark it on your calendar
It's a standing date.
as a standing date.
Yes.
It is to be set apart, holy, to keep it holy. So remember it, make a note, record this. It's also to make a memorial. So he is very specifically, for some reason, it's almost like God sees around corners. He is going to great pains here. He did not say, remember not to take my name in vain. You're right. He does not say later, remember not to commit adultery. On this one, he said, mark this down with indelible marker. Like, this is not to be erased. It's not to be moved. This day is separated. It's holy. Don't forget that.
To keep it holy.
To keep.
He's establishing this rhythm. This rhythm is established as set apart, consecrated, sacred, and holy.
Yes.
And he's saying, I am going to have you step into the rhythm
Yes.
that I've already established. Like, I'm setting the pattern. If you go back to Genesis, the pattern was set by the Most High. He's saying, now I want you to not just do what I say, do what I did.
Yes.
Do what I do.
Yeah, this is literally, that's the premise of it.
Right.
Imitate what I did.
See what I did and implement it. And doing so is what I believe continues to make it sacred and holy. And then it goes on to say 6 days, it's like just in case you're not quite understanding, 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, your male or your female servant, or your cattle or your sojourner who stays with you.
This is all one commandment.
Still the same commandment. And then he ends it with this, for in 6 days, he's like, just in case you need to understand the pattern, for in 6 days the Yehovah made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy.
So we're going to come back to that and exegete it together here in a few minutes.
Yeah.
What we were set out to do a couple minutes ago was read the 10 Commandments. So we'll finish that task.
Right.
But even before we set our minds to exegete that, I just want you to set the intention. If you're listening and this already feels like it might challenge you a little bit, number one, that's okay. First of all, if we fail to make a solid biblical case, reject what we say.
Right.
But if we don't, and we won't, but if you don't find yourself able to easily poke holes in what we're saying, just let the discomfort, just sit with the discomfort. Just set the intention now to sit with the discomfort and ask the Lord what he wants to do with it.
I'm going to keep reading, but I'm just going to say, I heard, I think it was Myron Golden made the statement, and he says, your problem is not what you don't know. Your problem is that you don't do what you already know.
Come on.
And so it's like some things that we're struggling with, it's not that we're ignorant, because that's a different problem altogether. Maybe you haven't been exposed to it.
Yeah.
But our problem a lot of times is that we're not doing what we already know.
Right.
And this has already been something that we've been taught and maybe not have applied.
So just to reiterate, because you just said we know this, because we all acknowledge it's one of the 10 commandments. So we do know it. But we're questioning whether we've applied it. But just to reiterate from the top, we all agree with the first one that there's only one God, and that you don't worship any other gods and you don't make any idols. And you know, we all agree that all of that applies completely. We all agree that literally and metaphorically and in every way, you don't take the Lord's name in vain. Mm-hmm. But I want us to note before we read on in this list that for the vast majority of the church, our response to this particular commandment is, but yeah, exactly. And a number of things may follow that. Jesus changed it to Sunday.
We're following what the apostles did. They worshipped on Sunday. Yeah.
So many different things can follow the but can we just acknowledge that so far we were doing great. Everything was yep. And then on this one, we're all like, yeah, but.
There's no qualifiers necessary. He goes on to say, you shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife or his male servant or his female servant or his ox or his donkey or anything that belongs to your neighbor. This is what the Lord said.
Don't do it.
That just is what an IS is. It's like you said, we don't argue about murder and adultery and stealing and false witness, coveting,
and I just kept reading it.
Yeah.
Over and over.
Yeah.
And trying to explain to myself why
Sabbath keeping was.
Yeah. Because that was so deeply ingrained in me. As a Jewish believer who grew up in a home that was just as Jewish as it was Christian.
Yeah.
I am culturally very Jewish. But because we bought in all the way on Jesus and his church, my family had submitted before I was born.
Wow.
To the decision of the prevailing opinion, which is, you number one, Jesus set a new pattern, and now this happens on Sunday, which when we exegete the verses together, we're going to find real problems with that. But number two, even if it is Sunday, let's just say that it is Sunday. I can respect, I don't agree with it at all. I'm not trying to hide that. I don't agree at all that it's Sunday. And yes, we do have church on Sunday, and there is tension there, and we'll probably touch on that conversation. And some of you, we're going to piss so many different people off for so many different reasons.
Right.
Who cares? Whatever.
It does not matter.
But I just want you to know that I'm not bothered by however you feel about it, whatever. You do you. And no judgment here, and I'm not mad if you're judging. But I don't think that what we're doing on Sunday is how we're remembering the Sabbath. But I used to. But I can respect people who think Sabbath was changed to Sunday in the New Testament era. What I was increasingly confounded by is, but the people I knew were not following that commandment on Sunday. like, okay, we're saying that now we do this on Sunday, but then we don't do it. And the answer there was, well, this was actually metaphorical about works and like being saved by works or being saved by grace. And that touches on a whole string of problems. One thing that I used to say, I'll be the first to admit it, and I've heard many, many Christians say this almost in a knee-jerk way: Jesus is our Sabbath. Yeah. There's truth in that, but I'm going to say something that will hurt your feelings. It's not in the Bible.
It's not.
It doesn't say that. Now, I would agree that it's implied that he is our ultimate Sabbath. He is our ultimate rest. And I think, like just about everything else in Scripture, the Sabbath points us to Jesus and was always intended to point us to Jesus.
Because like Jesus said, Sabbath was made for man.
And he is Lord of it. Sabbath was made for man, not man for Sabbath, and he is Lord of the Sabbath.
Yes.
So there is truth there, but at least the way the people I came up around and a lot of us, I think, there's kind of a knee-jerk, well, Jesus is our Sabbath now, and now we rest from our work by not striving with works for salvation and all. But the problem there is that that's an extra biblical argument.
Yeah.
It's an argument in some ways from silence. And also, though, the assumptions that are being made there are very erroneous. Christians have an assumption that works have nothing to do with the Christian life, and that is so wrong. It says that we were saved that we might do good works, which had been prepared in advance for us ahead of time. What the church has lost in the last 500 years by becoming instinctively, we have a Pavlovian response to the word works. It's profound. We've literally lost our rudder because we shy away from work. The only thing we are supposed to recognize is that no amount of good works that we do could ever accomplish our own redemption. For that, we have Jesus. That's it. In every other way, we are not in Jesus. We do not rest from our works. We only rest from works in the attempt to achieve our redemption.
Ephesians 2, for by grace you have been saved through faith. And let me just caveat, we get the words out of order. Mm-hmm. And if you get them out of order, like you just alluded to, that's when you come into the heresies, right?
Right.
For by grace you have been saved, what? Through faith. That not of yourselves, it is a gift of God, not as a result of works, so that no one may boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus, what? For good works, which God prepared beforehand so that we would walk in them.
If
we can't get this stuff out of order.
It says, no, what you're saying is so profound. If Jesus used the same interpretation, if the Father used the same interpretation about works that we're using, it's said right there that we're not saved by our works, lest any man should boast, not of works, lest any man should boast. Saved. Yeah. Not of works, lest any man should boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works. So if he interpreted it the way we do, we wouldn't be here.
Right, because his workmanship had to have been instituted.
Bro,
yeah.
You'll never get anywhere good by out-churching Jesus, by out-religiousing Jesus. Like, that's what Saul tried. Like, you
doesn't
can't
work like that.
No,
yeah, no.
So the idea that we're resting in Jesus, our Sabbath, by basically not doing any works, it falls apart on so many levels in so many different directions upon closer examination. Number one, we're still supposed to be doing good works. Number two, yes, the Sabbath points us to Jesus, but
why would he get mad at the man with the talent? Why would he tell that parable if we're not saved for good works?
I can't prove it, but I bet you there would be people who would say that parable was to the Jews before the cross, which is crazy work. But I bet you can find it if you look for it.
Yeah.
But why? Like, what is he mad about? If we're right about works, that guy did the perfect thing.
I was just Sabbathing, Jesus.
Yeah. No, Jesus, let me tell you about the 5 solas.
Right.
We don't do works anymore.
Right.
And Jesus is going, I know, that's why I haven't come back.
Right.
I said do business until I come, and you went, no, we don't do works anymore.
Right.
That's
crazy.
So it was very confronting to me, especially when I went a little further in my research and realized that many of our brethren in the Reformed camp, and Lord knows I find myself crossways with them more often than I don't.
Right.
But it is a family fight. It is within the kingdom. But one thing I do really appreciate about them is the radical commitment to deep study and exegesis of the word.
They definitely care about the word. Yeah.
Deeply. And we also essentially owe the Reformation to that camp. Yeah. And so, they are an asset to the body. But I realized many of them actually do keep the Sabbath on Sunday. They are first-day Sabbatarians. That's what they call it. So they don't work. Many of them do not go out to eat on a Sunday because they don't want to be the cause of somebody else having to work. And that tradition runs very deep in the Protestant Reformation. And I guess I'm not fully sure what the Catholic Church's relationship and the Orthodox Church and stuff is to that. I'm not as familiar with what their teaching on that is. But at least inside of Protestantism, there is a long and honorable tradition and many books written and so on, where they are making the case that the Sabbath is now on the first day, which we'll get to. But this episode feels like it's going to wind up being a little more theological than some of them do. I just want to encourage our audience. If that's not your bag, we're going to get to some other really good stuff too. Yeah. Like, this principle is something everybody should be concerned with, even if the theological side isn't your big concern. But
we're going to give you some practical ways why that's important as well. Yeah.
But we are churchmen, and so that's probably going to come through here, because to me it matters. That's where this journey started for me.
Yeah.
Before I knew how powerful the principle was, I was challenged on the theology, and I found it very confronting, because people who I really felt like were getting the wrong end of the stick on a lot were saying some things that made an uncomfortable amount of sense when it came to this issue. Right. And we have to be humble enough. We have to have the humility we cannot get so hell-bent on winning debate.
Yeah.
That we squash truth because you can do that if you're skilled at all. I'm pretty decent in a debate. If you've got any skills at all for debate, you can easily sideline inconvenient truth and, keep it out of the way of a point you're trying to make. But that's not, first of all, you'll never grow. But second of all, you're not doing anything for the kingdom there. I mean, the most kingdom thing, the most Antikemi thing I can think of is being able to learn a valuable lesson from somebody who's presenting like your enemy. Just a little bit of humility goes a long way in a situation like this. And so I just found myself staring at the 10 Commandments for hours, day after day, trying to explain to myself how 9 of them could be fully literal and have transitioned into the New Testament era with zero. We don't have to put an asterisk. We don't have to, nothing. Some of them, the way we would tend to break them in our modern culture has shifted a little.
Yeah.
To some extent, the taking the Lord's name in vain one falls under that heading. Most of us are not coveting our neighbor's donkey. But probably the most clear example of that is that for a lot of us, idolatry is usually something a little more metaphorical. It's usually something in our life that occupies position it shouldn't.
Yeah.
That we're bowing to, that's not him. But even that would have been idolatry then too.
Yes, sir.
So it's not a change. It's just a cultural difference in how we interface with that commandment. We are less prone to make something, put it on our shelf, and bow down to it.
Yeah, right.
But we are just as prone as anybody ever was to have a car sitting in our garage that can steal our joy if it gets a scratch, or
Right.
We can't pick up somebody and bring them to church because we can't get the mats dirty. Those are clumsy examples, but it can be just as physical.
Yes.
But none of them have any asterisk next to them where we have to say in the New Testament, this is a little switched, except the one. And I kept asking myself, number one, is it the 9 commandments or is it the 10? And I love about our Reformed brethren that are first day Sabbatarians, even though they believe it has changed to the first day, at least they feel like the commandment is the commandment.
Valid. Right, yeah.
I mean, I was blown away when I started getting around their discussions, hearing them ask questions like, and these are the people who brought us the 5 solas.
Right.
You can't get more, grace happy and faith happy, and you know what I mean? Like these are the by grace through faith people. But they were asking each other questions like, is it lawful to do X on the Sabbath? And I had never heard Christians talk like that.
Yeah, that's a little odd.
We grew up in the legalistic end of Pentecostal holiness. Right. I never heard anybody ask, did you? Is it lawful to?
That was.
That branch of Christianity, the ancient, the highly established Protestant movements and denominations, it's commonplace for them to ask, is it lawful to, in reference to the law of God, especially the 10 Commandments. They take it very seriously as it is, the law of God.
Yeah.
That of which the Lord Jesus Christ said, not one mark on a page, not one jot, not one tittle, not one vowel mark will pass away until heaven and earth. Like, just ask yourself, what does Jesus mean by that? We say very quickly that he did away with the law, and he did, but which one?
Yeah.
Because there's some law that he said not a jot or a tittle of it will pass away until all things are fulfilled. And all things have not been fulfilled.
Nope.
The spring feasts have been fulfilled. Go a step further and go to Psalm 119. The law of the Lord is perfect.
Perfect. I love your law.
Yeah. I love your law.
Uh-huh.
It's more precious than honey. It gives life. You can't say the law brings death. You can't say, Jesus nailed this law to the cross and not mark Psalm 119 out of your Bible.
Yeah.
Unless you figure out that the law that Jesus nailed to the cross was the handwriting of the decrees which were against us. But that's not the law of Psalm 119.
No.
That law is for us.
Yes.
Not against us.
Yes.
The law of God was always for us. The law of Moses had some stuff that was against us by necessity.
Yeah.
But the law of God, because it stood in the garden, because it was there in Eden, that law has always been for us. Because in principle, those laws stood in Eden. Those were always, it's just that in that realm, it was embodied in a much simpler form. Don't eat this tree. But everything that came out of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is what the Ten Commandments is protecting us from.
Yeah.
The lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the pride of life. So the Ten Commandments has always been guardrails to keep us from plummeting off the cliff. It's always been for us, not against us. So I'm sitting here like, I couldn't find any defense for why we're treating one commandment completely. I remember the day I told Brooke, it's an inconsistent hermeneutic. You have to read the first couple of commandments with one hermeneutic, put it down, read that commandment with a different hermeneutic, then put that one down, pick the old one up, and finish the list. It's a different hermeneutic, meaning the lens through which we understand what we're reading. Our interpretive model. Right. If you read the Ten Commandments with the one interpretive model that we use for 9 of them instinctively, that this is the law of God, that it stands, that it's for our good, that it's literal,
yes,
that you can't read this one and feel at peace with the prevailing Christian worldview with that hermeneutic. You have to choose a different one. And I remember telling her, we don't do that. That's not how you study the Bible. You never switch hermeneutics in the middle of your study.
Yeah.
You have to decide. Like when we read Revelation, we have to decide that we're dealing with metaphor here.
Right. Why do you think that was even an option for you to like toss out as a way to reconcile the passage? Like, why do we struggle so much with this particular commandment?
I couldn't have answered that before we started keeping it, observing it.
Agreed.
Right?
Yes.
Because I know that's why you're asking that question.
Right.
Because the answer is in the obedience. But I didn't know. I wondered about that. Let me just say, the closest answer that I've found before we started really trying to institute this in our lives and see what happened, because that's ultimately the decision we made. We just went, let's try it. Surely you couldn't get in trouble with God for just trying it. It is right there. So let's try it, right? But before that, what I did run across was there's some interesting stuff. It's a neat little rabbit hole if you ever want to go down it, for those of you that are listening or watching. Rome, the Roman Church, historically has viewed Sunday worship as a litmus test of papal authority. So in other words, ultimately, the real argument for switching the Sabbath from the seventh day, where God instituted it, to the first day, which is done by inference, because the way we read the New Testament, it looks to us like the church, like a lot of things happened on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
That is very questionable. When you really start getting into the study of it, super questionable that that's even the right way to translate and interpret what we're being told in the New Testament. But let's just say that that is true, that that Jesus did rise on Sunday morning, that there was, all this stuff that gatherings that were happening on Sunday and all. Let's just say that's all fully correct. We still would have to acknowledge that for those of us that don't look to the Pope as the head of the church, we're still making an argument from silence there. We're inferring that the Sabbath is now on the first day because we see some pretty big stuff happening on the first day. And so we're just kind of going, yeah, we think it's switched up, which is, if you think about it, that's ballsy.
Yeah.
To decide that we're pretty sure God changed this creation ordinance and forgot to mention it.
Yeah.
Didn't say outright one time, oh, by the way, as you can see, Sunday is now the Sabbath. Right. That's weird.
Right.
The Catholics have a little bit better argument than that. The Pope said it so. And there's some evidence to believe that the Catholic Church kind of considers that evidence of the fact that the Protestant movement, despite our self-awareness, our view of ourselves as having broken free from papal authority, that we're still under papal authority because we're still accepting that rule. So it's kind of one of the ways that they kind of see us as being like in the fold, but like we're problem kids, but we're in the fold. We're in the families. It's one of the ways that they can almost kind of extend grace to us, where it's like, okay, you're petulant teenagers, but go ahead and think you're living free. You're still obeying our rules because you're still coming to church on Sunday, and that's us. We did that.
Right.
So that was kind of before I had tested it. that was the closest thing I would have had to an answer to what you just asked. Right. When you said, why is this such an issue? Probably the closest thing I could have said is, I think historically it's been made an issue of by a very large and ancient institution that has a direct interest in maintaining its influence over all believers. And I say that without judgment. You make your own evaluations about whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. That is a factor.
That's interesting that you took it that. That's incredible how your mind works.
Why?
No, just because I don't think that's necessarily why it was difficult for our family when we.
Oh, no. Once we got into practice, the answer changes. So
oh, okay.
spit.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That was the closest thing I could find.
Oh, yeah.
But
leading up to
now
it,
I'm going to let you cook because even though I think that's a factor, it wouldn't be my answer now.
Right. Even before we put it into practice, when I first, hold on, let me back up. Let's give a little bit of context because and I say we, I mean my wife and I observed our pastors. See, y'all pastor a little differently. No, and I appreciate it.
I've never been told that.
Because there was never a time when we first integrated at Promised Land where you beat the pulpit and said, this is what the Ten Commandments says, and by God in heaven, we need to follow it. Why do I have to explain to y'all why we don't commit adultery and we don't steal and we don't kill and we're going to keep this out? Like, not one time was that ever that level of pressure, right?
Yeah.
Even though it's still a very much a truth. But we saw very quickly as we started, our lives started kind of like lining up. Events, invitations, time to, I guess, fellowship. There was a level of sacredness that was kind of fenced in around. A boundary was around Friday night all throughout Saturday.
Yeah.
And it wasn't for like the normal reasons of we're preparing for service on Sunday.
Right.
It's like, yes, that's sacred. We definitely need time to consecrate and put ourselves in a position to be able to pour out, right? But no, it was just like, no, that's family time. Yeah. And you were very clear, if there was an invitation that would have excluded your children, that was something that you were more often than not to decline. Very politely.
Right.
But you would find yourself just not participating.
Yeah.
Not loud, not boisterous, not obnoxious, just not there. And it's okay. And so we observed it.
It's a different kind of day.
Yeah.
Of
like, okay, it's like you kept it holy.
Yeah.
It's like you were actually reading the word of God and doing what, the Lord said for us to do, right?
Yeah.
So we observed it, and I remember we kind of like started kind of asking questions.
Yeah, you did.
That's the best type of evangelism right there, is when your life is a beacon of light and it exhibits truth to the point where someone's like, hey, excuse me. What's up with that?
Yeah.
Because a question that's not asked sometimes doesn't always receive the best answer, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
A lot of times people aren't ready to receive the answer until they have the question.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But now there's a level of curiosity that's being stirred.
Yeah.
And so there's a hunger that's starting to be established. And so even then, y'all was kind of like almost, I don't even know if this was intentional or not, but it was almost like you guys were like, I can let you in on a secret. You don't tell nobody about it. Now, you didn't say that, okay? But like that was the energy we got from it. It's like, This is something that we're not beating our chest about. We're not screaming from the rooftops about. We're just quietly observing it. Like Paul was talking about Thessalonians, like just not having idle hands, quietly doing,
Yes.
your work, just going about being a good Christian soldier, right? And then you just invited us. It was like, well, come over to the house. We're going to observe Sabbath. We're like, Sabbath? And of course, my mind is stuck on everything that, we've been taught or thought about, like this is not something like this is law keeping. And but I was curious enough to be like, okay, let's go check it out. And we just observed your family come together, share a meal, quietly reflect, and then intentionally start to unplug from all the different facets that we would consider work.
Yeah.
And it was an intentional thing. And you invited us into that rhythm and allowed us to just experience it. And then now me and my wife are like, okay, like this seems wonderful.
Yeah.
And necessary. But now we have more questions. Like, how do we do this practically? Okay, like, all right, we at first started kind of making excuses of like, okay, well, Friday night to Saturday is just not convenient for us. That doesn't quite fit in our schedule. We can maybe have a different day to Sabbath. I'm gonna take my Sabbath on a Thursday or a Tuesday. Something that's a little bit more convenient. I might be off work that day. I might be able to rest a little bit different.
Yep.
And I think my wife was the one that kind of brought that question of like, well, can we,
Oh, I remember.
can we remix?
Yep.
Can we remix the Sabbath?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna let you share how you answer, because I can't articulate it the way that you did. That was so wonderful. That made so much sense to us.
I don't know if I can duplicate that, and if something I say here misses something that was in that, just holler. But I know that, generally speaking, when I'm confronted with that question, I usually start here. If you set aside time to rest, that is, first of all, and we're going to talk about this, but first of all, that is a human necessity. We need rest, real rest.
Yeah.
Marked out, sacred space in our lives, margin built in, that is rest. If you do that and you're faithful to it, God will bless it, and it will bless your life, and you'll see massive fruit from it. I always encourage people, ask the Lord to prompt your spirit about this, but I would encourage you, once you've experienced that, just give it a try doing it on the seventh day. Because
And to be clear for everybody, the seventh day is
the Sabbath, Friday night
okay
into Saturday until the sun goes down on Saturday.
Right.
The reason for that is because in the Bible, the story of creation begins in darkness and God brings light. So in the biblical mindset, and thereby to this day, still in, for instance, the Jewish liturgical calendar, the next day, the new day, begins when the sun goes down. And
that's when it starts.
that's when it starts. So, when a biblical day is counted, it's counted evening and then morning. And that has all kinds of wonderful implications, not the least of which is when it says that he makes his mercy new, it lends a whole new hope to that for me, that in the dark of the night, I already know we're in a new day where he's going to make his mercy new in the morning.
Goodness. Yes.
And so I think it's profound that humans count days from sunlight to darkness, but God counts them from darkness to light.
Yeah.
And it gives hope, because God always starts in darkness to bring about the new day. But that is when we do it. When the sun goes down on Friday, it is Sabbath. When the sun goes down on Saturday, you've completed the commandment to rest. So I always encourage people, great, because people often start from I don't know that I can do it then.
Yes. That is a default.
Which still begs your question, why is this so hard? Because we've given I started with the closest thing I had to an answer before I started trying to do this. Then you started to move into the direction of what kind of tends to become the answer once you start doing it. But we still haven't totally answered that question. Why is it so hard? And I'll just say outright at this point what I know you're getting at and what I'm getting at. If you try it, I can confidently say after a couple times, it takes a little while to even get to where you can pull it off.
It's the reason why it says labor to enter into my rest.
Which is one of the things I've got marked, because it's super important to talk about that.
Yeah.
It's part of the commandment. But your answer will change as you go into that, because as you and I both know, the profound fruit that this produces in your mental health, your marital health, your relationships within your family,
Come on,
even your effectiveness with the other days of the week. For those of you that have been walking with the Lord a long time, many of you will probably be able to relate to the example of tithing. Tithing is one of those things that it's hard to explain to people who haven't tried it. That's why Malachi 3 says, test me in this. And I'm going to say this, and it's going to offend some church people. Tithing is way less important than the Sabbath is.
come on.
Tithing is a covenant you can choose to enter with God, and it brings profound fruit, and those who have tried it know what I'm talking about. Sabbath is a covenant God requires of his people. It is more important and significantly higher priority to God.
Yeah.
And I say that as a pastor who believes in tithing and leads a church where our leaders are required to be tithers.
Yeah.
And yet, bro, many times I'm sure we have all said to somebody who's struggling with tithing because they feel like they don't have enough funds already, hey, pray about it. If you feel agreement in your spirit with what I'm saying, just do the thing from Malachi 3. Test the Lord in it.
Yeah.
Because as the bishop of our church, the senior pastor emeritus, who's now gone to be with the Lord after 53 years of faithful pastor, here, so often said God can do a lot more with 90%. God can do a lot more through my 90% after I give him back his 10% than I can do with my 100%.
Yeah.
And you just don't know that until you try it.
Right.
There's something very similar that plays out. You don't have the time to Sabbath until you try it, and find out that you don't have the time not to Sabbath.
It's like prayer. Right.
Literally, so much of the reason why people don't have the time to Sabbath is because they are spinning their wheels in life.
Yep.
Because they never Sabbath.
They have to do that just to keep up.
Yeah, you're treading water.
You're literally treading water. Trying to meet the frantic pace of life that you were never meant to try to outpace.
Yep.
And God built in a cheat code into the system.
Yep.
It was just like, I'm going to do this so you know how vital it is. I'm inviting, no, scratch that. I'm commanding you to do the same if you're going to be followers of me.
Rest is not important because of weakness. If it were, why would God have rested from all of his works? Rest is not important because of weakness. Rest is important because of order, because of how the universe works, because of how God works, because the universe is an extension or a figment of the mind of God. So the universe works the way that God works, to the degree that it's not fallen. So rest is important because rest is part of God's personality. It's part of how God functions. So rest matters because of the order of fruitfulness, not because of weakness. We rest when we're weary. Sometimes we rest when we can't go on. We rest for a lot of reasons that are born of necessity, but that's not why God rested, and it's not why he set the Sabbath apart as holy. The principle of creation, the principle of bringing forth fruit out of this world, a core tenet of that is rest. It's a key ingredient of the recipe of being fruitful.
I would say that we don't even rest when we're weary and tired. What we do, we stop working in maybe a literal sense, but I don't even know if we truly, I guess I'm just struggling, like, unless you're like really already implementing this principle, this commandment, I guess I'm struggling with equating what God did as far as entering into rest with what we do if we're not actually following that rhythm. Like, Sabbath rest is not the same thing as just not working your 9-to-5 job.
Yep.
Sabbath rest is not the same thing as you just turning all the lights off and not going out and just hanging out with other people. Like, just because you did not go out or go to your 9-to-5 or do whatever doesn't mean that you've actually rested. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%.
I think we have to really understand, like you're saying, like, God didn't rest because he was weary. He rested to set the principle into place. Now we gain the benefits from the rest, especially if we're weary. But I could be jumping ahead, but like the Word of God says, for 6 days you shall labor. So like that's setting a precedent of like you're actively doing something, hopefully inside your purpose, hopefully destiny changing, hopefully doing something that is proclaiming the good news, pushing forth the kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. All of the above, right?
Yeah, hopefully it's meaningful,
Right.
purposeful.
But God is giving you a time for you to basically understand that even all that you have done those 6 days, the success of it is not relying on you alone.
Yeah.
Like that mindset of like I am causing this to be. I'm holding it all together. It's almost as if he's like saying he's building in this restriction from our ego, from allowing us to enter into a place where it's like, I accomplished all of this myself.
Yes.
I've done it all by myself. And God's saying, no, you can't. And you did it. Just like the man, he says, I will go to sleep and I'm going to tear down my old barns and I'm going to build up new ones to house all of my possessions. He says, this night, your soul is going to be required of you.
Yeah.
You know?
You fool.
You fool.
Before we even got a chance to experience the fruitfulness that would endow our lives with the manifold graces of God, like where it was like abundantly evident to us after a very short time of instituting Sabbath in our lives that, holy cow, we can never go back to not doing this because we won't get anything done again. We'll be back to back then when we were
On the hamster wheel.
yes. Before that happened, we hit a roadblock, and I've never known anybody who doesn't hit this roadblock. Before you get to taste the good of it, you're going to hit I think everybody probably, or most people, are going to go, how is this so hard to do? Again, begging your question, why do we have such a hard time with this commandment? I have personally experienced this, where people will make the argument, kind of where Aslan was coming from. Well, I can't do Friday night through Saturday, but Mondays work really well for me. And then they'll come back to me a few weeks later, oh my God, I've been doing this Monday rest and I'm being so much more effective. I'm feeling so much better. I don't usually get that from the first couple weeks of somebody who decides to do the seventh day. Usually they come back to me and go, how do you do this? Dude, like we have not been able to successfully. I'm telling you, Satan might fight you a little. I don't think so. If you set aside a different day to rest, I think just life fights that a little. Just, there's a lot on everybody's shoulders.
I don't think he has a problem with us resting.
I don't think so. All hell burns loose when you touch this sacred day. When you try to come into alignment with this commandment, oh my God. It is, the first couple times, most of us that I'm aware of will think, I can't do this. Yeah. Like, I don't know how you're supposed. So there's some level of resistance built into the keeping of this actual command that does not make sense if all that comes out of it is you have a healthier rhythm in life, you have downtime.
Right.
Because in my experience, the enemy won't really resist you on that. That's just like a good habit. And he doesn't really give a rip if you improve your habits, whatever. Hell doesn't care that much. You might become a little more effective, but they can still fight you. But there's something else happening here, because when you try to make the seventh day holy in your life, everybody I've ever walked through this with comes back to me and goes, I can't, how do we do this? And I'm always honest with them and tell them, oh, we're still fighting for it too. Like, it's a process.
Right.
But when you run into that resistance, and that's what happened to us, before we saw the fruit, and my answer changed from, I think that, there's resistance in our minds to this because some of it's been programmed in because there's a church system that's trying to keep control. Before I realized, oh my God, this is about the enemy trying to keep us from fruitfulness, I ran into the resistance. And the resistance was wild. And I remember going back and reading the commandment again. And that's when I saw the part you brought up a minute ago. And I remember coming back to Brooke and saying, and at the time I said, there's two parts to this, but there's actually more than two parts.
Yeah, there is.
But I said, oh, there's two parts to this commandment. It's not just rest on the seventh day, because we already know it's not just rest. It is rest on the seventh day and keep it holy. But I came back to where I said, it's not just the seventh day is holy and rest in it, remember it. It's 6 days shall you labor and do all your work. And that's the part we're struggling with. And I will tell you, because the Sabbath is one of the most Antikemi, like it's a cornerstone of true Antikemi life. And I want to encourage people who are what we would call, and this is verbiage that we owe to our Reformed brethren, our first day Sabbatarians. They discuss this. There are people who are providentially hindered, meaning the circumstances of your life directly preclude your ability in good conscience to do this.
Yes, sir.
I would say about that, for this we have Jesus. His righteousness is where ours comes from, all of that. But I would say talk to the Lord about it and be very honest with him and with yourself. And I would go a step further and say, consider, could it be that part of your life is still in Egypt, groaning under oppression?
Come on.
And maybe what you need to do is cry out to God to be delivered from the bands of the oppressor, because you might be groaning under the taskmaster's whip. And if you call out to him, he might actually deliver you out of whatever that is.
Come on.
But I want to encourage people, we're not here to, when people tell me they are providentially hindered, I may gently challenge them to try to make sure that they stay on their toes and are sensitive to if the Lord is trying to deliver them from those circumstances. But I'm never going to judge them and say, no, you're not. Like, that's not my place. If you are saying you are providentially hindered, God has allowed circumstances in your life that keep you from the ability to do this.
Yeah.
I'm willing to accept that as a fact, but I will say that ought to cause a desperation in you for God to deliver you from it, from that circumstance. Because for some reason, that didn't seem to be a big thing that was happening for 4,000 years when this command went forth. So I went back and realized, oh my God, it says 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. That's part 1 of the commandment. And that's when Hebrews 4 started to make sense to me.
Come on.
Labor. That word, it means do things quickly. Labor, work hard to enter that rest.
Yes.
Make it a priority, right? And so I realized, oh, this actually puts an urgency on my approach to the other 6 days. Because remember, the Sabbath day is not just God trying to make our lives chill. It is for us, but it's not a luxury. It's a critical component. And so that means you wind up having to change your approach to the other 6 days if you're trying to do this, where you have to be thinking from day one, I need to order things this way.
Come on.
Because sundown on Friday, that time belongs to God.
It infiltrates every other aspect of how you choose to live your life.
Absolutely.
You can no longer just haphazardly stumble your way through your week, because you are having to intentionally plan for, there's going to be a dedicated, blocked off time where we are ceasing from our ordinary work.
And there it is. Ordinary work. The statement that our lives are not our own becomes very practical, very real. Even the 6 days no longer belong to me, because the fact of the 7th day belonging to him means that my attendance to that responsibility changes everything about how I approach the other times. So giving that time back to God, which he requires, forces me to also submit the rest of my time to him. I need him now to order my steps, or I'm not going to be able to do this thing. So it brings wisdom to bear in my life. It clarifies priorities. It can make some things reveal themselves as noise, not signal. This thing in my life is consistently causing me to be late for my date, my weekly date with him. I need to re-examine this thing.
It forces you to have clarity. That is so good. Because without this boundary marker, you could almost take a very cavalier approach to getting things kind of done. You're all over the place.
Yes.
I'll get to it when I get to it. But when there's a deadline that you are required to meet, that forces you to now clarify, get crystal clear on, okay, what is necessary? What's really important? And you're able to now drown out, like you said, all of the noise and now hone in on that signal.
It makes idols reveal themselves on the walls of your life. Because something that didn't look like an idol before suddenly comes into clear view because it is occupying space that keeps you from being able to keep this date, this standing date with him.
Even the way he ordered the commandments. Because he says, you shall have no other God before me. Okay, you already establishing priority number one.
Yeah.
Then he goes and talks about, you shall make no idols.
Yeah.
And just in case you have made some idols, remember the Sabbath and keep it
Yes.
holy, labor to enter into that rest.
Yes.
And so he's like, I'm going to now help you magnify what you are possibly having as a God before me,
Yes.
and creating an idol inside your life.
Yes.
Like, that is so layered.
And when you read Leviticus 20 and it says these are the feasts of the Lord, all of them are annual except the first one. The first one there is the weekly Sabbath.
I believe he used the word perpetual,
Perpetual.
like forever, ever.
So there's something about the order in which this shows up in our lives when we do it his way, when we actually obey the command.
Yeah.
Like, we remember the Sabbath day, we keep it holy and distinct from other days, we do no work in it. 6 days we labor and do all our work, not any 6 days, the first 6 days of the week, and the seventh, not every 7 days, the seventh day.
Yes.
We rest. When we do all these things, something about the position that his rest occupies in our life becomes extremely revealing.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, stuff that we thought fit within the cadence of living for God no longer matches the rhythm. It's clapping on the wrong beat. It's not, but you wouldn't know.
That's right.
So it turns the light on.
Uh-huh.
And so we went, oh, so these 6 days, okay. And then we started realizing he thought this was so important. He didn't say about a lot of the commandments, this is why. Only a few. Like, he did say about there is no other God and don't worship any other ones. I'm the Lord your God who brought you up out of Egypt. I'm a jealous God. Like, this is why. He did say about honor your father and mother, that your days may be long in the land. And but he didn't say anything about, like, don't commit adultery. He didn't say because marriage is sacred or because he didn't say when he said don't kill, don't commit murder. He didn't say, like, because
life is
that's super uncool. People are made in the image of God. He didn't say any of that. About this one, he goes, I also want you to know the reason. So there's when you start slowing down, and which trying to institute it in your life forces you to do, and you start actually reading the commandment, some stuff becomes very clear. And one of those things is the fact that his reason is tied to the order of creation. Verse 11, for in 6 days Jehovah made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested again, not on a seventh day, on the seventh day. So again, I'm saying it's not like you can start counting from Monday. It's the seventh day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy, which incidentally, Sabbath, which means intermission or repose, this is directly tied to how fruitfulness works. It has to do with produce. Let me put it this way. This is more than a religious institution in the most sacred sense. Like, not even in any pejorative sense, like communion is a religious institution. There's nothing wrong with that, but this has some other implications to it. It's also the code to being fruitful in the universe God created. And so when I realized, and I hope that some of our listeners will pick up on little things like this, if these are not a part of your life, it would bless you and help you to pick up on some of these habits about how you read the Word of God and how you study it.
Right.
Once I clocked that God is tying this to the creation story, I went back to the creation story. Like, those kind of little things can make a big difference in what you get out of the Word.
Yeah.
It says, this is why this matters, because in 6 days he made the heavens and the earth, sea and all that is in it. Okay, so he's just tipped me off here that this is tied to the creation story. So let me go back there and see what it's about, right? So chapter 2 of Genesis begins, thus the heavens and the earth were completed and all their hosts. The only thing that's in the first chapter is the story of the 6 days of creation, right? So this is the next thing that is said after telling us about the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed and all their hosts. Let me just for kicks, let me see. Yeah. So the last words of Genesis 1 are, and there was evening and there was morning the sixth day. So literally nothing else comes between that and this statement.
Yeah.
Thus the heavens and the earth were completed and all their hosts. By the seventh day, God completed his work, which he had done. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work. We're talking about the God model here, yes. We're also talking about the creator model, and we're also talking about the creative model. So yes, it is God's model. Yes, it is the creator's model, but it's also the creative model. This is how you create within this universe, and this will prove it out. By the seventh day, God completed his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from what? From all his work done. From all his work which he had done. So you're resting from a specific thing, everything that you just did. Then God blessed the seventh day, sanctified it, set it apart, because in it he rested from all his work which God had created and made. This is the account of the heavens and the earth when they were created in the day that the Lord God made earth and heaven. And now God sets about in a very specific environment to take the next step. Listen to this. Now no shrub of the field was yet in the earth, and no plant of the field had yet sprouted. So this is the gap between the creation of this realm, the creation of this world, and the fruitfulness of it. So God paused and rested as his intermission between creating a world that would be very fruitful.
That's so good.
And going to bring forth that fruit.
Yeah.
And what he did after he paused was he pulled a man out of the dust of the ground, planted a garden, put him in it, and breathed the breath of life in his nostrils and gave him dominion over that garden. So God's actions in Genesis 1 created the environment where fruitfulness can exist. But before he undertook in Genesis 2 to bring forth that fruit and put somebody over it in a position of dominion, he rested. If I could put it this way, the seventh day is the inhale. Of the universe. That's how we breathe. That's how this thing breathes. So when God was preparing to create a man and breathe into his nostrils, breathe out the breath of life into his nostrils, he let it all breathe for one day and called that day holy. That we're looking at the breathing pattern of the universe.
Right.
That is in alignment with his.
That's so good. It puts it into such a clear, different perspective that I think a lot of us were ever taught.
Oh my goodness.
Like when you teach it from that aspect of it, of like, man, what you're laboring to do all of these things and to bear a result, but just follow the blueprint for the maximum yield.
The blueprint. Literally, we're staring it in the face. Oh God, please bring this season of fruitfulness fruitlessness in my life to an end. God, I've been trying to be faithful. I've been paying my tithes. I'm going to church. I'm
living in sin.
Witnessing. I'm not living in sin. I'm praying. I'm reading my Bible. Why am I beating my head against the wall? God, please bless the work of my hands. Bring me fruitfulness. I am the Lord thy God, which teacheth thee to profit. Teacheth thee to profit. Failure to profit in the world that he created for us to be able to profit is not a failure of function in the spirit realm. It's not a failure of blessing from God. It's ignorance.
Or apathy.
Right.
Or both.
We have to learn to profit.
Yeah.
He teaches us, but he put that blueprint right in front of us. The only thing we lack is the hunger to uncover it. But there's a lot of us beating our heads against the wall in prayer, begging God for breakthroughs that are only being delayed by our life being out of alignment with we literally are not driving the car right. Like we're not, he gave us the machine. It's just user error. It has nothing to do with the prosperity gospel, with manifestation, like all those things are whatever. We can have those discussions. That's not even what I'm talking about. Somebody bought you a Rolls Royce and you are sticking the key in the exhaust pipe. Screaming at it to go somewhere and telling the person who bought it for, I love it. It's beautiful. But why doesn't the stupid thing drive? Because there's an order that it operates off of. This all ties directly to what the wise man said in Ecclesiastes 5. He said, let's see here. I'll start in verse 11. Ecclesiastes 5:11. When good things increase, those who consume them increase. So what is the advantage to their owners except to look on? The sleep of the working man is pleasant, whether he eats little or much. But the full stomach of the rich man does not allow him to sleep. He's talking about all of the vanities and frustrations of living life within the matrix by the rules of the matrix.
Right.
That's the premise for this. There is a grievous evil which I have seen under the sun. By grievous evil, by the way, in this book, we're not reading really directly about sin. We're talking about this sucks. This is not the way things should work.
Right.
There is a grievous evil which I have seen under the sun, riches being hoarded by their owner to his hurt. When those riches were lost through a bad investment and he had fathered a son, then there was nothing to support him. As he had come naked from his mother's womb, so will he return as he came. He will take nothing from the fruit of his labor that he can carry in his hand. This is also a grievous evil. Exactly as a man is born, thus he will die. So what is the advantage to him who toils for the wind? You work your whole life for something you can't take with you. How is that different than just working for wind, right? So throughout his life, he also eats in darkness with great vexation, sickness, and anger. We've all known these people. People who accrue significant assets in this life, but the miseries of their lifestyle and the pressures of the world they live in preclude their ability to enjoy them, right? They're divorced, they're miserable. You know, they're wealthy, but nobody would want to trade shoes with them. Nobody would want to walk in their shoes, right? Here's what I have seen to be good and fitting, verse 18, to eat, to drink, and enjoy oneself in all one's labor in which he toils under the sun during the few years of his life which God has given him, for this is his reward. Furthermore, as for every man to whom God has given riches and wealth, he has also empowered him to eat from them and to receive his reward and rejoice in his labor. This is the gift of God. For he will not often consider the year. Listen to this. Somebody could be set free right now by this. For he will not often consider the years of his life, because God keeps him occupied with the gladness of his heart. If you want to stop obsessing about life passing you by, learn the art of enjoying what you have so far and resting in it and sitting with it and dwelling on the goodness of God to have brought you to this place. Learn the art of doing that, because you will get so much more out of each day that you'll stop being so fixated on how many years you're going to get. Days are so much more important than years in terms of the value one can get from a human existence. So many people live so many years in so few days. Someone can die very young and live many more days than someone who dies old. And I've brought it up on this podcast before. Jacob told Pharaoh, when Pharaoh asked him how old he was, the days of the years of my life have been few and filled with evil. The days of the years of my life have been few and filled with evil. It was, I think, 140 when he said that. David died at 70 years old, and the Bible says he was gathered to his father old and full of days. This man lived less than half the time that first man did, but so many more days. And so Solomon is telling us here in Ecclesiastes 5 that it is of God that someone look on the fruit of their labor and enjoy it and partake in it. That's from God. It's of God. If you read Genesis 1, what does God say at the end of every day? And the Lord saw
It was good.
that it was good.
Yeah.
And on day 6, when he made humanity, it was very good.
Very good.
But on day 7, he sat with that.
I love how John Walton, how he details that creation narrative. And with the ancient Near Eastern, like he always writes with that mindset and understanding how they thought. And he was saying that rest was not merely inactivity or a cessation of labor in the modern sense of a rejuvenating nap. Instead, it signified the following: entering into residence and reigning. When a deity rested in the ancient Near East worldview, it meant they were taking up residence in their temple and assuming their rightful sovereign rule and administration over their domain.
Yes.
Rest was the result of a crisis being resolved and stability being achieved, so that things could settle down into normal operations. And that, like, that's just from like the deity's point of view, like how they understood it. But from our humanity's point of view, he was saying, therefore, the Sabbath rest is not about achieving our own self-sufficiency or promoting our own activities. Rather, it involves recognizing God's sovereignty, the primary purpose to acknowledge that God is on the throne and in control of the cosmos, providing for and sustaining all of creation, and our participation in God's ordered system. True Sabbath keeping, he says, means living a life that's in sync with God's intentions for human life and participating in his work rather than striving to create our own order apart from him. Creating our own order apart from him. Rest is properly ordered activity focused on worship and fellowship, living from God, gracious provision rather than working to attain it. Like, that's so heavy to me. Even to the point of, he said it also like this, that when Jesus talks about the Sabbath, he makes statements that seem unrelated to rest if we think of it in terms of relaxation. In Matthew 12:8, he is the Lord of the Sabbath, right? When we realize that the Sabbath has to do with participating in God's ordered system rather than promoting our own activities as those that bring us order, we can understand how Jesus is the Lord of the Sabbath. Throughout his controversies with the Pharisees, Jesus insisted that it was never a violation of the Sabbath to do the work of God on that day. Instead, or indeed, he noted that God is continually working. The Sabbath is most truly honored when we participate in the work of God. The work we desist from is that which represents our own attempts to bring our own order to our lives. It's to resist our self-interest, our self-sufficiency, and our sense of self-reliance. And that leads me...
What is that from?
This is a quote from John Walton, The Lost World of Adam and Eve.
I just wanted to reference that because I think a lot of us will want to read that.
It's so good. I've got a chance to like read some of his work.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. And like that like hit me with a ton of bricks when I read that, because it made so much sense when I started to like implement it and actually like have those conversations with you and your family. But then you answered, like, I want to just preemptively answer a question that I know some
Yeah.
people are already having. It's like, okay, I hear you. I hear it's a commandment. I see how important it is. I see the value in it. However, I have a 9 to 5 that
Yeah.
requires me to work either overnight
Yeah.
or all day Saturday. I'm working on Saturday. I don't have the luxury to just not do my ordinary job.
Right.
And I remember you addressed that one Sunday morning about people who were, I guess, struggling with trying to like enter into that rhythm and keep that specific day, the seventh day, holy. And I think he kind of touches on that is that, and I'll let you kind of like really dive into it, explaining it even better. But it's like mentally, you stop trying to order your life, putting everything in its proper place. Like you take a one day, even while you may be doing your 9 to 5 job, you're saying that, you know what, God, you hold it all together.
Yes.
You hold it all together. This is not contingent upon me making everything meet. You hold it all together. I am releasing every bit of anxiety, worry, fear, doubt, whatever resonance that I'm resonating with that's lower and beneath how I should be coming into agreement with what you're ordering my steps to be. I'm choosing to do that right now. And that is not an easy thing for us to do. Like, that was just profound how you kind of like took that pressure valve off of our lives.
I'm laughing as internally as you're saying that because I remember that Sunday and you almost always have access to any set of notes that I may be working from. So maybe you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I don't think I had that in my notes. I think that was extemporaneous.
I believe so.
And why that makes me laugh is because I remember thinking when I said it, holy cow, this is so good. And it like it actually it does relieve a pressure valve, but it adds a layer of accountability because it proves that anybody can do their best to keep this under any circumstances. And it kind of blew my mind when it came out. Like
Yeah.
it was the Holy Ghost teaching me on
Yeah.
the job.
Literally, in the
Yeah.
moment, real time.
Yeah. And so what I'll say about that, Leviticus 23, I think I said Leviticus 20 a minute ago when I was referencing the feasts of the Lord, but it's Leviticus 23. So I think I may have misspoke, but this relates to that. The Lord said to Moses, spoke again to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel, say to them, these are the Lord's appointed times, which is,
Moedim.
these are his dates. Yeah, Moedim. These are dates the Father has set with his bride, with his children. These are dates, his dates. When Brooke and I go on a date, often, it's our date. But when my kids and I go on a date, sometimes it's my date because I've decided I need time with that one. Sometimes it's their date because they've reached out for time with me. But these are our Father's dates. These are not our dates. These are his.
Yeah.
So this is his agenda. So these are the Lord's appointed times you shall proclaim as holy convocations, mikra, a called out meeting, a set apart meeting. My appointed time. This is what's in my day timer. He's inviting us to sync up our calendar with him.
Yeah.
For 6 days, work may be done, but on the seventh day, there is a Sabbath of complete rest, a holy convocation. You shall not do any work. It is a Sabbath to the Lord in all your dwellings. Okay. The form of work that is not permissible cannot be holy work, sacred work, because the priests ministered in the temple on the
Yes.
Sabbath. So, by definition, what you just said a minute ago, it's not all work that's prohibited. It's work that pertains to the common business of life.
Yeah.
Jesus pointed this out to the Pharisees, who had completely missed the point of the Sabbath, as it's very easy to do. And many of the people that I was debating with at the beginning of this story fell
That's their
into this
mentality.
trap.
Yeah.
But Jesus made the point to them. It's always been permissible if an ox falls into the well, even if it's your neighbor's ox, just going to help your neighbor get their ox out of that's permissible. It doesn't even have to be your ox.
Right.
There's something sacred about helping a living creature, and especially someone else's living creature. So anything that's got that added layer of sacredness to it, that we're preventing suffering, or we're facilitating worship, or we're all of that is totally permissible. This is supposed to be ceasing from your work, like the you stuff. And that's where, when I was teaching or preaching that Sunday, he taught me something, which is this: anybody can choose to set apart their mind at any time. Anybody can tell anxious thoughts, not today.
Not today.
Anybody, and I know there's mental health conditions that can play into this. Don't ever let condemnation. We have the blood of Jesus. Like, he has kept it with perfection. Yeah. He credits us with that. This is not about striving for righteousness. This is about learning how to walk in righteousness. Right. So don't let the enemy mess with your mind if you're a person that struggles to break out of anxious thought cycles and all. This is just about setting the intention of your heart and doing your best to really fulfill it. Right. But the point is, your boss can't tell you that you have to think about the rent today. Your boss can't tell you that you have to stress about, the kids' Little League schedule today. That's a you thing. So even if you are a person, as I said a few minutes ago, who is providentially hindered, God has allowed your life to be in a situation. You may even be someone who doesn't have to say, yeah, I kind of got myself in this pickle. It may just be life got you there. Yeah. And you're in this position where you don't have the option to not be doing your normal work on the seventh day. But the truth is, nobody is in a position that they can't tell their mind to shut up. Today, if I think, it's either to do what I'm doing right in front of me, which I have to do, or I'm going to set my intention very clearly on him, by which I mean it would be totally lawful to think about your wife or your husband, your children, yes. Like in the way of reveling in the blessing that they are in your world and how grateful you are. Like, don't think about what you're mad at them about. Think about the good that they have brought into your life. Like, that is what it would mean to keep this day holy. It would mean any part of my life that I physically have the ability to dedicate to dwelling on the goodness of all that God has created in my world. That's what I'm going to do today. And so I remember saying that from the pulpit. If you are a person, and yes, I do think it would be a good idea to cry out to the Lord and ask him to deliver you from that circumstance. But supposing he says, my grace is sufficient for you. Okay, fine. Yet in all, you still have the option to choose to take every thought captive on that day and only allow yourself to dwell on things that are sacred and uplifting, full of the goodness of God. And tell your worries, we don't do that today. And tell your organizational mind, we don't do that today. And tell your you crypto bros, this is not the day to plan your moves.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Don't do it. You would do better I'm saying if you're going to try this, you would be better served to miss a trade and stay in the rhythm that God has chosen and breathe in with all of creation on the seventh day and with its creator and see what the wisdom that he will produce in you so far outweighs any strategizing you could but let's say he didn't.
Man,
The fruit in your life
come on.
will so abundantly vindicate this, not just because you're keeping the law of God. No, because the law of God is the user's manual for being fruitful in the world he created. I don't know how to
It's a principle. It's a principle. And it will absolutely work. The best part about this, about any principle, is that it's not reserved just for the people that call themselves Christians.
Right.
It's like the law of sowing and reaping.
Yeah.
If you plant good seed in good soil and you tend it and cultivate it and water it, it's going to grow.
Yes.
The seed is not going to check and see how faithful you are in paying your tithes.
Yes.
The seed is not going to check and see, do you worship God and pray 3 times a day? It doesn't care.
Right.
You've done the thing that you were supposed to do to get a result.
Yep.
And God honors his word, and he honors whoever. And so that's why I think it's important for us as believers to come back into alignment. Notice how I didn't say come back in alignment, but I did not. How I did say come back in alignment, but did not say come underneath
Yeah.
the law.
Right.
We're not talking about that. No one here is talking about being tied to the set of rules that we arbitrarily attribute to God's law, right? However, what we are saying, there are some things that God has absolutely instituted in this universe as a principle that is for our benefit, that will help us to resonate at the highest frequency possible.
Yeah.
But this is really not a suggestion.
No.
Is that you are not going to be able to truly prosper unless you come into agreement with something that he has instituted and called holy.
I know what you're wrestling with because you're a preacher in 21st century America advocating for obedience to the law of God. It's sad that we feel the need to qualify that so heavily.
Right.
When we are talking about the law of God, we are never talking about bondage. We're talking about obedience, and we are talking about fruitfulness.
His commandments are not grievous.
They're not. They're not heavy. There is a yoke. Here's the thing. When we're talking about the law of God, we are also talking about how the universe works. So,
right.
Let me just make it real plain. And I get it. For some of y'all, this is the first time you've ever heard, we come from a background that prides itself on being modeled after the apostolic era of the church.
Yeah.
But it's wild to me that people from our background have such a hard time being challenged to go back to things that the apostles would have considered so self-evident.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer.
I don't always agree that it's as clear that some of the things we think happened on Sunday. That's a whole debate. We're not here to have that tonight, I don't think.
No.
It's a debate, and I'll just say it would surprise you how flimsy the evidence is that the thing we call the first day of the week in the Bible is always referencing Sunday. It's just not that clear. It's not. That's a translational thing that's going on. But let's just say that that he did rise on Sunday morning, that they are all meeting on Sundays and all that. They were all going to the temple on Shabbat or synagogue if they lived far from the temple. The first church, they absolutely were keeping the Sabbath. There's not much discussion of it because it is so presumed.
Yeah.
You would not, the reams of paper they would have had to dedicate to this topic if they were going to repudiate Sabbath keeping, because people would have been losing their minds. Jesus absolutely did reframe it. He took it out of what it had fallen into, the corrupted religious system that he'd fallen into, and he brought it back into the kingdom and took away the bondage that had been layered on top of it. But even Jesus never once disputed the necessity of the Sabbath.
No.
Not once. He didn't clear his throat about it. So it's wild to me that especially people from a background like ours, the Christian Restoration Movement and all that, we are so uncomfortable because we have had it so deeply ingrained in us. The law is bondage. The law is bondage. The devil is a lie.
Yeah.
The law of God is not bondage, and it is only Satan that would work so hard to try to make us think that it is.
Come on.
The law of the Lord is not, has never been, and never will be bondage. But let me just say it real plainly. You can no more ignore the Sabbath commandment and expect your life to bring forth the fruit it's meant to bring forth and the cadence of your existence to be aligned and filled with righteousness, peace, and joy in the Holy Ghost, then you can expect to jump off a cliff and have God save you from gravity. The law of God is the rules of the universe.
It's not bondage, it's boundaries.
For the same reason that you would not allow your child to step into the middle of the busy street is why God told us to set the Sabbath day apart.
That's so good.
Because it protects us and it aligns us with fruitfulness. And so I am like brimming with confidence when we talk about this, because I'm like, yeah, I know we're going to offend some people, but a few people will try it.
And this is how I want to end it. And it's the most Antikemi thing.
You're not saying something like I was going to say. You just said the literal words I was going to say.
It is the most Antikemi thing. It is a cheat code, and it is a weapon against the adversary. If you want to truly give the enemy a black eye, I want you to intentionally take your hands off of whatever you think that you are holding up, holding on, propping up, pushing over the finish line. Because that is a direct reminder to him that Jesus truly, his workmanship is what made us possible to even receive righteousness.
Yeah.
To even have that exchange of garments to take place. Like, there's so much more we could unpack about how this picture details the salvation message.
Yes.
Justification.
Yes.
sanctification, like how we are ushered into the presence. We can't properly rule and reign unless we are in this rhythm.
100%.
That's like you saying, I am going to step onto the scene and take the throne, but I'm refusing to put on the crown.
Yep.
That would make any sense.
Or I'll work for this company, but I'm not coming to staff meeting.
Certain things are non-negotiable.
Or I want to move up in this organization, but I refuse to accept my boss's invites to dinner.
Yeah. It's not negotiable. And once we stop negotiating with things that are non-negotiable, our lives will line up so much more. And you will find fruitfulness, like you said. I would dare say that if you start to implement this, going into it with the mentality that this is going to be one of the hardest things that you ever had to do, because the enemy of your soul wants to stop you from integrating this into your lives.
Yeah, because that's the real answer to the question you asked. All hell comes against this.
And that should give you cause to rejoice. It's like, obviously, I'm on to something.
Yep.
Because I'm having this level of opposition. But if you implement it, and I am a living, breathing, walking, talking testimony of what Sabbath keeping, like that sounds like a dirty word, and it shouldn't be. Yep. It's been stolen from us. But what Sabbath keeping has done in our lives, and we haven't been perfect. We have messed up. We have found ourselves falling back into thinking that we're resting when we're just wrestling
Yes.
with trying to like let go. I find it like so interesting how those words are spelled differently,
But
they really, really sync up in a lot of ways with how we tend to enter into rest. It feels more like rest, W-R-E-S-T.
well,
It's being ripped out of, something's being taken from us.
yeah, going back to older English, you're wresting something out of the enemy's hand.
Yeah.
W-R-E-S.
Uh-huh.
You're wresting it out of his hand.
But we feel like we're wresting something out of our hands, letting go of it. And God's like, let go.
Yep. Part of my family's testimony, a lot of it's not mine to tell, but when my parents were toward the end of their tenure in the kingdom of darkness, their hearts were turning back to God after years of looking everywhere else, from Marxist politics to every kind of Eastern religion and drug-fueled experience you could think of, typical of a lot of people in that era, the 70s. And toward the end of that, their heart began to turn back to the God of their fathers as a last resort. And this is before Jesus revealed himself to them, but they just went with what they knew. And one thing they knew from especially my dad's youth, because my mom grew up in a more secularized Jewish context, but my dad had a grandfather that lived with them that was Orthodox. And so it was more relevant to his experience. He knew one thing we could do to try to get closer to God, if we're going to bark up that tree, is we could keep the Sabbath. And the home, it was before I was born, but my older brothers have always borne witness to the fact that the home was just eaten alive with disunity. And I mean, it was bad, like toxic to the point of, my parents had a suicide pact. Like, if things don't get better, it was bad. Yeah. And my oldest brother, Sam, has repeatedly testified to me that my dad would come home with a challah as the sun was slipping low on Friday evening, And for 24 hours, there would be peace in the home. They weren't praying. There was drugs involved. It was a far cry from anything religious. You know, you said a little while ago, these are principles.
Yeah.
For 24 hours, he said it was like magic. There was peace. There was family unity. And this experience is actually what drove their hunger for more of God. And I always found it ironic that then part of finding Jesus, or Jesus finding them, because of the brokenness of how church has been, involved having to give up this thing that had been so pivotal in their return. And I'll just tell you, I'm going to say openly, I believe a significant part of this last day revival is going to be a recovery of the Lord's Sabbath among the Lord's people. And I look forward to the day that even the cadence of our church gatherings can, I'm not going to say can, because it could. We could just change it. Pastorally speaking, it's not a simple thing to upend massive sacred cows. And there's a lot of them we're working on at once in a congregation that is very established in its ways. And this particular one runs deep in our culture. You don't touch Sunday morning with Christians. You just don't. But I'm just going to say, that wasn't God's idea.
Yeah.
That's an us thing. And
as long as we're clear.
As long as we're clear. And we are. My family and I are committed. Your family and you are committed. Pastor Randon and his family are committed. A lot of us are committed to living this by example to the best of our ability and encouraging those around of us to examine it, to take it to the Lord, to go to the Word, to let the Lord challenge them on it.
And pretty soon, people in your circle around you start to recognize this is a rhythm of your life.
Yes.
And they begin to, if they love you, honor it. Like there's been times where they've wanted to reach out for my wife to complete some business that she normally would do, or myself be like, oh, hey, I know it's your Sabbath, so I'm not going to ask you for this day. But hey, when Sabbath is over, can you XYZ? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And with the ones who don't show that honor, I have occasionally corrected them when they say, I know this is your Sabbath. And I've said, no, it's his. And the reason that I've done that is because it matters to me. If I was saying that this is the time that I set aside to rest, a lot of preachers do that on a Monday, that kind of thing. I would understand. I wouldn't appreciate it, but I would understand if people barged in on it when they didn't have to. I wouldn't think it was great, and I would encourage them not to. And I would even be willing to communicate that that's not communicating much respect. If I'm telling you that I try to rest in this period and you just, you know, I mean, if you're going to the hospital, call your pastor. Again, that's not ordinary work. But if you're continually stepping on it, you know, that doesn't communicate a lot of respect to me. But this is more profound than that, because to me, when people don't honor, when you tell them you keep the Lord's Sabbath and they don't honor that, now we're starting to get into how much do they respect him? How much do they honor him?
Yes.
And that's without even pushing the issue of whether they need to institute it in their life. And the reason that we're taking this delicate approach with our church is because that's how we feel the Lord has instructed us to handle this. Some churches do an overnight revolution that I don't believe it's ever of God, when they become divisive and start shooting barbs at other churches that have. One thing we need to recognize is that coming out of Egypt and coming out of Babylon is a process, and not all of us pitch our tents in the same place at the same time.
Yeah.
And we need to be very careful not to start killing off people we perceive as stragglers or confused or whatever, because I promise you the Lord won't take kindly to us attacking his people.
Right.
So Sabbath keepers need to stop firing at will on people who aren't there right now. That's not of God. Some churches may feel called to make an immediate switch and a full, and there may come a moment for that for us, but we have been instructed by the Lord to this point to lead by example here and invite people into it as they recover their lost identity as the Israel of God, along with all believers, Jewish, Hebrew, or otherwise, of all ages that have honored the living God in word and deed. And so I want to encourage folks to also, I'm just going to like say so that you know, so that you hear me say it, and I know you well enough to know you won't have any problem with acknowledging this. We don't get it right every week.
Oh.
There's value in the attempt, and there's value in repenting when you miss the mark. Sorry about that, Lord. I meant no offense. Please help me do better. One of the biggest areas that I have struggled is my mind. So I can get myself to stop doing, but it's harder to get myself to stop thinking in certain ways.
Yeah.
And so I've had to apologize to the Lord when I came out of a Sabbath, and you can tell coming out of it whether you rested or not, whether you were in his rest or not. And I've had to apologize to the Lord. I'm sorry, I did not bring every thought into captivity. I tried, but I failed. Forgive me, help me. You know, we're coming out of Babylon.
Yes.
But this is going to wind up being, for those of you that care about the Antikemi cause, this is going to wind up being a core piece of it, because it matters so much in the kingdom of hell, because you've said several times that this is a cheat code. I agree, and then I'm going to gently challenge that and say, I'd say it's more like source code.
Ooh.
It.
I like that so much.
What we're talking about here is corrupted and lost programming. What we're talking about here is a Trojan horse virus that has invaded the church, and it comes from hell. And our loss of this day, because if you read the commandment, it does not say, every 7 days take a rest. It says the seventh day is holy and different, because on that day he rested.
Yeah.
Which is why I can tell you right now he didn't change it in the New Testament, because that would mean he changed, and he doesn't.
Does it?
But bottom line is, it matters so much to hell because it is source code. Because when the church recovers this, and we are, Katie, bar the door. Because all of a sudden, the operator is going to be in alignment with the manufacturer. This machine is going to go in a way we have never seen before. And we're going to be much more impervious to the assault of the enemy because of being in alignment with the cadence of his kingdom and his universe that he created. And so this is a cornerstone of the Antikemi life. The reason that we're kind of starting here in our discussion of his law and his commands, and I don't know if we'll do them all in a row. It may be something we come back to. I don't know, but I do know we had to address this one first because it's the one that we've lost. The church keeps 9 commandments, hopefully. But at best, the church keeps 9 commandments. And we need all 10, if for no other reason than it is a part of, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. You cannot do that entirely without surrendering to his will on this topic. Once you know this truth, you got to take it to the Lord, examine it. It's been a process for me. It's been a process for you. No judgment. We're not going to be offended by your questions. We invite them. We welcome them. But I'm just giving you the heads up. If you really want to live the Antikemi life, if you really want to lie opposite the kingdom of this world, you're going to need the Sabbath. And not just the principle of rest. Rest matters. I was going to say earlier, and when you were talking about the nature of rest, because rest is a whole thing in and of itself.
Right.
Rest matters. We could do a whole separate episode just on rest as a principle, because it matters, and anyone who's ever done anything knows that it matters.
Absolutely.
And that you have to be intentional about it. The more you're attempting to accomplish, the more intentional you have to be about rest. And entrepreneurs will tell you that. Anybody will tell you that. Rest matters. One of the things about rest is, if I grew up in an agricultural context, in an agrarian lifestyle in a lot of ways, and if you plow a field every day, it will die. God said let the land rest every 7 years, but the farmers already knew you can't plow it every day.
Yeah.
The topsoil contains tons of microorganisms and nutrients that have to settle in, and those colonies have to grow and develop. If they get turned under constantly, you'll be constantly killing all that life.
You're living in flux. It's chaos.
Right.
Yeah.
And even in our modern monocrop agricultural system, we no longer eat what comes from the earth, because the earth has been fully destroyed, because they're consistently plowing these fields with machines that compact the soil to the extent that it kills all the life that's in it, and then planting the same thing over and over again so that the same nutrients are being drawn out again and again and again. And so the topsoil winds up just about as lifeless as the Sahara Desert, legitimately. Yeah. And on these massive crops that our food is coming from, these massive farms, they just spray chemicals and the plants grow from the chemicals. The only function the dirt has is giving the roots something to hold on to. And so we are eating fruit that is not the product of the earth anymore. It's literally chemically formulated. They just spray on the stuff that the plants eat. And if they didn't do that, nothing would grow. And when they leave those fields fallow, nothing does grow. And so the whole system of this world, the whole system of Babylon, is raping the earth and pillaging of it of all of the essence that was supposed to bring forth life, and that's having untold consequences on our health and our diet and all of that stuff. But this is one area where you can begin to realign yourself, not just with the principle of rest, which is, as I, just used the agricultural example to explain how critical rest is. You cannot plow every day, but not just the principle of rest, but his rest in alignment with his timing, and the fruit will just be so self-evident. It will bless you in ways that we can't even really tip you off to, and you won't really know that until you try it. And so my encouragement would be, start where you're at, lean into Calvary, understand this is not for your righteousness. This is from obedience, out of gratitude and a desire to know him better and to reflect him better. And repent when you mess up, but that's not a matter of condemnation. That's a matter of realignment. And start fighting the good fight on it, and begin with what you can do.
Yeah.
So if you literally cannot this week not work on that day with ordinary work, tell your mind, we're going to do something different. Friday night, I'm going to be arresting you every time you step out of alignment.
Yeah.
Consecrate to the Lord what it is in your power to consecrate to him. Ask him to reveal himself to you in it and to help you bring your life into alignment with it. Begin where you are. Depend on the blood of Jesus for your righteousness, the finished work of Calvary for your salvation, but understand that you are obeying not the law of Moses, not the Old Testament. You're obeying the law of God.
That's right.
And you are using the source code of the universe. And you haven't tried that before in this area. And it's going to rock your world in the best way.
And this is why you're tired.
Exhausted. Have no grace.
Come on. I love it. I love it. Hey, don't take our word for it.
Take his word for it.
Take his word for it. Just do it.
And take it to him. Examine it. See if these things be so.
Yes. Yes. Well, until next time, my friend, live Antikemi.
Live Antikemi. We love you.
Love y'all.